Hey everybody, this is a deck profile for my Pokemon TCG deck that I used to win the last league challenge at the weekend, my local league challenge at Edinburgh Pokemon League. The deck that I was using was a Metal deck. It's based off of this guy here, Bronzong. That had a 3-3 line of Bronzong. Unfortunately, I just got this to show you, but on the actual day it was an expanded league challenge, so I actually used the Bronzor from Next Destinies, which has 70 HP over 50, and it also has a 3 retreat cost, which is pretty important to the way that I've ran this deck, as you'll soon see. Also got 2 Keldeo EX to rush into and retreat. So you can basically just rush in with Keldeo, then use Bronzong to Metal Links onto the bench, one of your Metal Energy from the discard, if you don't already know how it works, and then you would have maybe one, at least, almost always 2 Bronzong on the bench, plus the Keldeo to rush and retreat, and you can just stream your attackers all game long. Now, with this main core to the deck, you're obviously going to have a bunch of different attackers, or at least I did anyway, and to start off with, used 2 Seismitoad EX. It's always been a strong attacker since it came out. Quaking Punch, 30 damage, and stop your opponent from playing items for a double colorless. It's just really powerful. It's really strong early game. If you can get a Muscle Band and DCE right off the bat, then you're going to be stopping them playing items, and you can set up your Bronzong fairly easily. And then it's also good in the late game because you can just use 2 Bronzong to get those Metal Energy onto Seismitoad and keep locking them for the entire game, essentially. Next up, I've got a full Metal Dialga EX. It's a very nice attacker in the Metal deck. Overall, it's just really strong, and Chrono Wind's always going to be a fairly good attack for EX Pokemon, but I mainly had it in here for if you're needing to one-hit a Pokemon EX that has 170 HP, then you can do that, because you're going to be hitting for 150, Muscle Band's 170. It's a really strong attacker, would highly recommend using this. Next up, I got 2 Cobalion EX, also really strong attacker, and mainly just in here for its Righteous Edge attack, 30 damage for 1 metal, and you get to discard a special energy attached to the defending Pokemon. Really good for the entire meta right now, considering almost every deck is running special energy. You're going to be most worried about DCE, so this is good against Toad, it's good against Rayquaza, Night March, anything that has special energy, and it's also just good against Safeguard Pokemon, because you can go through its effects and hit them for 100 damage, which is a straight knockout. So we're playing 2 of those. I'm also playing 1 Mewtwo EX, all round good attacker. X-Ball's always done a lot of damage, it's always going to be a strong Pokemon to use, and you can always Metal Links onto it in the late game if you need to, and of course you're hitting for Psychic Weakness against other Mewtwo or Mega Mewtwo EX, or even Mew if you're playing against Night March decks in Expanded. And then we've got an Edgeslash EX, which is always a standard in Metal, I would say, and a lot of decks are really playing it just for its ability, but I did end up using its attack quite a few times to get knockouts, and although its attack isn't the best, it's always going to be decent, especially combined with its ability, and you're really just going to be shutting down any decks that have special energy again. Finally, got a Heatran, which is our non-EX attacker. I didn't actually use this in any of the matchups that I had, but it's an all-round good attacker, 130 HP, and 3 retreat costs, which is important as you'll see, and it's just got 2 strong attacks. I might end up changing this because I didn't actually use it at all, but we'll see. It might come in handy in the future. So with this metal deck, it's got a lot of varied attackers, although most of them are metal. You're mostly going to be using Toad, and then everything else in the deck is backup, or it's very situational and you can use anything depending on the matchup that you have. Now, moving on to the trainer cards, which is the core for any deck. Start off with the supporter cards. We're running 4 Professor Sycamore. Standard. You're going to be wanting to discard your deck as much as possible, and the draw power is just crucial. You're going to be discarding metal energy with this and anything that you just don't really need in that particular game. And also, because it was expanded, I've got 3N, which is one of, if not the second best draw supporter in the game, in my opinion anyway. Just shuffle draw. If you got bad hands that you don't want to discard, then it's a really good supporter to be using, and you're also going to be disrupting your opponent as you do so. 2 colorists, again shuffle draw, but you're going to be drawing more cards hopefully in the later game. Really good against Rayquaza decks or any decks that are just going to be filling their bench up, and you're almost always going to have a full bench as a result of Bronzong and Keldeo sitting there. We've also got 2 Xerosic, which I have in here for discarding the special energy attached to my opponent's Pokemon, or also if there's any tool cards like float stones that they're relying on. And also it's just really nice if one of my EXs get a head ringer on them, for example Toad or even Cobalion. It would really be useful against those. And finally, ran 2 Lysander, which is pretty much standard for most decks now, but it really comes in useful, and you're really going to be able to get any KOs that you want once you get set up as well. It's crucial in this deck. Moving on to item cards. Just running 4 VS Seeker to get any of the supporter cards that you need at any point in the game, which is really crucial, and you're just going to be keeping your stream of supporters and draw going, which is needed throughout this deck because sometimes it can be slow, but once you get started and you get your Bronzongs in play, then it's really unstoppable. Next up, I'm running 3 Ultra Ball just to search out any Pokemon. It's pretty self-explanatory, and you can also discard metal with those, which is really helpful. I'm not running 4 because I've actually got 2 Heavy Ball, which is why I was saying that the retreat cost is pretty important. You can just search out Bronzong whenever you need to, you can search out Toad, and it's just really helpful as an extra search engine. And in addition to that, you've got 2 Battle Compressor. You can discard anything, mainly go for metal, which is the obvious choice, but also supporters in the early game, because we run max amount of VS Seeker. We can just discard a couple of supporter cards that we're not going to be needing, and then get them back out whenever we need to with VS Seeker. We're also running 3 Muscle Band just to hit for extra damage. It's good for Toad, it's good for Dialga. And 2 Floatstone for Keldeo, Rush and Retreat. Went over that with Metal Links. Got 1 Escape Rope, which is really just for forcing our opponent to put something else active if that's what we need to do. It's not going to affect us because we've got Keldeo. one computer search, just search out anything in the deck, discard anything that we don't need from our hand, and 2 steel shelter, which is really just as a counter stadium. That's why we only need 2, because special conditions aren't that huge, or at least they weren't in the games that I played up, and there's not really a huge amount of stadiums that you can play with this deck, so I'd just go for steel shelter. It's the best option. And for the energy, we're running 4 double colorless energy, standard for Seismitoad to attack as soon as possible. Turn 2 you can start Quaking Punching, you can put it onto Mewtwo, X-Bow and Dialga. It's just DCE is always going to be good for heavy attackers, especially EXs. And then we're running 7 metal energy just to keep the flow going throughout Metal Links and throughout the game. And that is the core of the deck. As for the matchups that I played in the League Challenge, I kind of predicted that there was going to be a bunch of Night March decks, and that was true. The first game that I played was actually an Excelgor Trevenant deck, which I had the advantage for the most part, and I was able to actually item lock them back with Toad. And then after that it was just a case of stalling and going for as long as I could, and it ended up being a tie, although I was ahead on prizes. Next matchup was a mixed kind of Night March and Flareon deck using Mew, and I won that game just based off of Toad and Edgeflash and Dialga, really showcasing all the attackers in my deck and using everything that I could. And the last match that I played was just a straight Night March variant, and they just couldn't really draw into anything, so I ended up having to use Edgeflash just in case that they got a DCE, and I just used that, and then Mewtwo came in at the end to finish off, and that was a really quick game, and they couldn't really get set up, but I had Bronzong set up by turn 2. It just shows you the power of this deck, and I totally recommend using Metal for Expanded. If you have any tips or advice that you want to give, then that'd be much appreciated, and any feedback is welcome. I hope you've enjoyed this deck profile, and I'll see you again soon.